Welcome to another edition of CHP Talks. We are here today to talk about the year gone by and the year ahead. So, Rod, 2020, what a year. What can we say that hasn't been said and hasn't been agonized over? But let's look back at some of the things that we wanted to do and some of the things that we actually did do.
Yeah, well, of course, we wanted to do much more than we were able to accomplish in terms of travel, meeting with people. As we mentioned last week, a number of things were canceled for us, or were canceled things that we planned to participate in. The Manning Conference, National Prayer Breakfast in Ottawa, March for Life. Well, we did participate online with that, and we thank Campaign Life Coalition for including us in that. A lot of EDA AGMs, Electoral District Association annual general meetings, were canceled, including ours here in Skeena-Bulkley Valley. We had a speaker planning to come up, and we had to drop that plan. ACPP meetings in Ottawa. For those who don't know, that's the Advisory Committee of Political Parties, and Peter and I have been privileged to participate in that. Usually twice, sometimes even 3 times a year in Ottawa, meet members of other parties and officials in the Elections Canada system there, including Chief Electoral Officer. And so those have been important times for us. This year, some of those were dropped, and we are doing the same things by Zoom, which isn't quite the same. The biggest one was our national convention, and a lot of work had gone into that. We mentioned all this last week, but we're just reviewing here. A lot of work went into that from our convention planning committee, the resolutions committee, the policy committee, and people setting up the venue. And so we were very sorry to have to put that off until next year. But we hope that we will be able to do that in the fall of 2021. And then, of course, travel. Other years, I've gotten pretty well to all the provinces. I haven't made it to all the territories every year, or at all to none of it. But the provinces, usually we are able to touch base with our members, and that had to drop as well last year. We sort of made up for that with the virtual conference in the fall. We were able to touch base again online. But I did make it early in the year to Alberta, Ontario, and of course, a couple of times to the southern lower mainland of British Columbia. I live in the north. So we were just as busy last year, it seems. It's amazing, but we were just as busy from our home offices as we were when we were traveling through Zoom and other electronic means. And of course, here we are on CHP Talks. That's something that came to life in 2020 in a real way. We began doing it on a weekly basis instead of just occasional talks. And so that's been a really good thing. We have connected with a lot of important people, significant movers and shakers, frontline workers in the culture wars. And then we also continued to get involved with promoting petitions and causes that were initiated by others. C6 and C7, the conversion therapy ban and the euthanasia expansion. We got involved with promoting or informing our members in terms of how we can resist those initiatives that are still moving ahead strongly through Parliament. We're sorry to see this government so committed to those things. The Delta Hospice Society, we participated and still are participating in a membership drive to help them get pro-life members on in their society so that they can make good pro-life decisions and protect the elderly that are in their care, defend them from the assaults of the British Columbia government that seems so intent on ending life rather than on saving life. And then we did participate in a couple of the freedom rallies to defend free speech and religious freedom. This is a very important issue for us today. And there are sometimes some misunderstandings about when the body of Christ should stand up and be counted and make their voice heard. So we don't want to be careless in how we address these issues, but it is critical that God's people are aware there are dangers to the freedoms that we enjoy today, especially freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And so we have to stay alert, vigilant, and that is ongoing today. That's not something in the past. The COVID is still here with us. The COVID lockdowns are still here. And we really need to hold our governments accountable that they make the best decisions that are good for all Canadians. Anyway, that's a little bit from the past. Peter, we're at the transition period now going into 2021.
Yes, well, in reflecting back as well, I've talked to people and mentioned that it was 2019 before any of this stuff hit, any of these lockdowns and the pandemic and all that, that we had the theme in 2019 for our election of life, family, and freedom, and it's a theme that has not grown less true. It has aged well. The need for protection of life and the importance of family, and for standing up for our freedoms has been on clear display all through 2020, and we expect that it will also hold true for 2021. So, Rod, looking forward, what new things are we planning, and what old things are we continuing in 2021?
Yeah, and I'll just say that the life, family, freedom as a rally cry or as a theme for us, we also carried that same theme through the BC election. Most of our members would know that the Christian Heritage Party of British Columbia was in an election this fall with our newly elected leader, Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, and 5 candidates. And so we use the same theme: life, family, and freedom. I mean, who can argue with those 3 things? Although people do try. One thing I always think of that. Yeah, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, well, that was the approval of Laura Lynn becoming CHP BC's leader. That was definitely a high point for 2020, and we hope to see that enthusiasm that she brings continue into next year as well.
Yeah, she's doing a great job in her other role as well. She is continuing to do live interviews with some really interesting and significant people. I'm tuning in. She's now doing that as a podcast as well, so I'm able to catch more of those interviews. She's been very active, and we have had a lot of new membership growth in British Columbia, and we're really happy about that, and we expect more in this coming year. There's a verse I love from Lamentations 3:22-23. His mercies are new every morning. And, I often claim that if I've had a bad day, I do have occasionally a bad day, that God's mercies are new every morning. We can get up in the morning and start over again. So we've got 365 new days coming at us, starting on January 1st, and that's 365 days when we can experience God's new mercies every morning. And we look forward for new horizons, new door openings, new opportunities, and new ways of bringing the message of life, family, and freedom to Canadians. So what are your, Peter, you're head of Election Readiness Committee. You have anything you want to let people know about 2021?
Well, of course, the big question that will always come to mind is, will there be an election? And it is the big question, and it is a very important question. And the answer is not something, of course, I can state definitively. According to the fixed election date, it shouldn't be next year, but we've already heard the Prime Minister say in an unguarded moment, the election next year, he put it. And he might have made a mistake there, but it might be what's actually on his mind. And so we do have to be particularly prepared with each season, with each spring and with each fall, the likelihood of an election becomes greater and greater. And it has been, the heat was turned up this fall even hotter than I would have expected in advance. And you can expect that it will be, it'll reach a fever pitch, or we might have an election in the spring. And so we've got to be prepared, and we'll be doing some campaign training in advance of that. We've got to get some new potential candidates taking some new training courses, and some experienced candidates building on their experience and on their training, and getting ready to hopefully run again. So that's all I can say about 2020, 2021. But it's a major hurdle, and it could come to us early in the year. It's entirely possible.
Yeah, we started to get used to the idea of elections every 4 years, and now we're back to with the minority government, and people kind of calculating when is their best opportunity of getting reelected. I think Mr. Trudeau almost would have liked to have seen one this last fall, because he was kind of riding high in the polls. And basically, I think that's that, as it has been brought out in some of the articles talking about a potential election, that society tends to rally around their national leader, whether or not they're liberals or conservatives, whatever they are. But in a time of crisis, of war, and this is the coronavirus crisis, to whatever extent it is an engineered by the media or whatever, but there certainly is a health concern out there. And this prime minister has used it as an opportunity to, number one, throw out a lot of taxpayer money and borrowed money to voters. And that seems to be a thing, unfortunately. Sometimes people do vote based on things that they are perceiving that the government is doing for them in terms of money. One thing that I wanted to mention is coming up in January. We just had a national board meeting, and we are intending to, we've been invited to seek intervener status in a judicial review case in the city of Guelph. The Guelph right to life has been denied the opportunity to put 3 ads, I think, on buses or on bus shelters. And those ads are so innocuous, you'd think that the city of Guelph would be thanking the Guelph right to life for bringing out these issues of life. But instead, they're saying, no, we don't want those messages in our public spaces. The 3 messages are this: life should be the most fundamental human right. And I think life is the most fundamental and basic human right. The second one is human rights should not depend on where you live. And so
Where you were, yeah.
On where, go ahead.
Where you were, yeah.
Okay. Human rights should not depend on where you are. So the message there is a baby in the womb is still a baby, and after it's born, it's still a baby. And so in or out of the womb, and sometimes that's a matter of minutes, of just a few inches of movement and a few minutes of time. And so, of course, the way our society now treats, the way our government treats the baby in the womb, it has no rights at all. Once it's born, those rights supposedly appear suddenly. The third message is, what about her choice? And it shows a baby in the womb. And the idea, which has been misunderstood, deliberately misunderstood by the left, the idea is that that baby is going to grow up to be a girl and a woman. And what about her rights if she is denied the opportunity to live? But anyway, the city of Guelph has taken exception to these particular ads, has said they cannot be utilized in the city of Guelph. So the Guelph right to life is taking this to a judicial review. And we have been invited to seek intervener status. And we will do that if we can raise the funds. And we're already at work in that. Jim Enos, our Ontario president, has prepared a letter for our members and supporters, and we are seeking assistance. By January 30th, if we can raise the money, and I think it's about $30,000 that we need. If we can raise those funds, then we will definitely have a lawyer representing our point of view. Peter, you were going to comment on the how our judicial review was carried on in Hamilton.
Yeah, well, this whole story appeals very much to those of you who have been involved in CHP in the past and understand that just a few years ago, CHP Hamilton had put up bus shelter ads, and they weren't politically correct. They weren't unnecessarily inflammatory, but they weren't politically correct. And the city of Hamilton took them down. So they had put them up, but then they took them down contrary to the contract. And we, as a party, sought a judicial review, and by God's grace, actually won that. It was a resounding victory for freedom of speech and for freedom of political opinion and political thought. And so we would like to bring that experience to the city of Guelph and remind them that cities also have to respect freedom of speech, just as the city of Hamilton had to learn. So the city of Guelph ought to learn that too. And that means that some things will get put up, which not everybody on their staff or in their list of citizens who might like to complain about things would agree with. And we won't agree with everything that goes up on buses and on bus shelters either. But we have to be very careful not to curtail freedom of speech beyond what is absolutely necessary for the protection of innocent human life.
If we as citizens and as a nation, if we lose the right to express ideas that are contrary to the government's position or contrary to even public opinion, broad public opinion, then we lose everything. We lose our free society. We lose the kind of democracy that we've become used to. The opportunity for the citizens of a country to direct its affairs, which is really the basis of Western society. So it's very important, if we have that opportunity with the help and support of our members, to have our lawyer speaking on these issues and tying together our experience in Hamilton with what's going on with the Guelph right to life. We will certainly be there, and we look for another victory in 2021.
And so, Rod, come spring, I guess it'll probably depend on whether we're in an election or not, but I know you want to get out on the road again. And you've got some plans in the air, some thoughts in the air about meeting members across the country on a cross-country tour in 2021.
Yeah, well, there's, often in the past, I'm flying back and forth to Ontario and renting cars and whatever. There's an opportunity this spring for me to drive a car that needs to be delivered to Ontario, and so it would, if you're in a vehicle, you can certainly stop at places along the way, make little detours and so on, as opposed to it's quite difficult when you're crossing the country in an airplane to visit people all along the way.
They don't take kindly to wanting to stop off in Winnipeg, on your way to Toronto for a quick visit?
No, I haven't had any pilots offer me that opportunity. So anyway, we're looking at probably late April, early May, something like that. And just want to let our members know so that when you're planning your annual general meetings or get-togethers or, some kind of meeting in the spring, if we coordinate that, we can probably meet with many of our members during those months. Hopefully the coronavirus restrictions, regulations will not be keeping us from accomplishing that purpose by that time. We're kind of, we have to take some steps of faith. And so this is one that we think could be a good way to meet with many of our members in the first half of the year.
Yeah, so if you're in, especially if you're in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, that'll be the first provinces for sure, and I guess we'll have to see beyond that if you carry on all the way through to the Atlantic or not. But those will be the first stops at least. And again, as Rod said, subject to where we're at, I guess, with restrictions. But Lord willing, we'll at least be able to have small meetings, and small meetings are what are needed to make big plans usually. So
right. And then coming up in the fall, we are certainly hoping to have our triennial convention. Now it'll be 4 years instead of 3 since our last one in 2017. But in Calgary again, and plans are underway. We have done so much work already in terms of resolutions with the policy committee, but there is room for more of our members to get involved. If you have either policy suggestions or suggested improvements to our Constitution, now is the time to be putting those things on paper. The proper course of events is through your local electoral district association. And if you don't have one, then through your provincial council. And if you don't have one, then you need to bring it to the national board or even directly through the Policy and Strategy Committee. David Darwin in Ottawa is heading that up. And so any of these things, we're suggesting ways that you can get involved. If you don't know the contact information, you can call our Ottawa office, Dr. George Zeckfeld, and he can direct your steps. info@chp.ca or national office at chp.ca or 1-888-868-3247 is how to reach George during business hours. So we thank you for, we know that our members are going to get involved this coming year. There's so many projects, so many threats and assaults on our freedoms. And it's people like you, Salt and Light, that make it possible for us to do what we're doing, but we also need you to do what you're doing, to be the frontline workers, excuse me, the organizers, the candidates, the representatives of the party, making the message of life, family, freedom known in your communities, in your provinces, now and on into 2021.
And one more category that I'll add to that list is donors, and we're almost at the end of 2020, but if you can make a year-end donation to CHP, you can do that right away on the website, chp.ca, and if you get that donation in before the end of the year, your tax credit should show up very shortly during tax season, and the tax benefits are significant, and we hope that you will donate and experience those that reward, I guess, of the tax credit, but also the reward of helping your party to do more. Many small and medium-sized and large donations make this party able to do the things that we're able to do. All of these travel plans, of course, do require expense. We're a political party, but we don't have funding from the government. That's not how political parties are funded. They are funded by members. And so we turn to you all the time, but especially at the end of the year to make a year-end donation. So if you're able to help us with that, we would much appreciate it. Again, the website is chp.ca.
Yeah, well, of course, some political parties are more equal than others, Peter. You know, the Conservatives and the Liberals, after a big election, they get about $20 million each of taxpayer money. We don't get that money. So we're even that much more dependent on our members so that we can make an impact. And I mentioned earlier about the intervener project with the Guelph Right to Life. And I don't know if I spoke clearly on this, we're not looking for donations at this time. We are looking for pledges for that. So it wouldn't affect your giving for this year, and hopefully it wouldn't affect your ability to give to CHP. This would be a project where you would be giving to support us being able to intervene. It's on top of what we're already doing, but we're only looking for pledges until the end of January. If we get the pledges for $30,000, then we'll go ahead and then we will call in the pledges, so that you can look at that as a separate category. It's not directly supporting the work of CHP. It's supporting our ability to support the work of others in a very critical issue that has bearing on our ability as a political party to speak freely on these important issues.
Yeah, again, it affects freedom of speech, and so that affects all of us, and it affects the standing up for human life, and that is what we are all about here at CHP. So, Rod, do you have a final thought before we wrap up here?
Well, we certainly wish every one of you out there a wonderful 2021. We hope and pray that this COVID crisis will soon be in the rearview mirror. There are a lot of concerns about that, but in terms of what moves towards world government and things like that. And I'm not going to dwell on that at the moment. There's so much information out there, but we hope that for each of you and your families, your communities, that 2021 will be a year of growth, of opportunity, of a harvest, and of fruitfulness in all that you put your hands and minds to. We thank you again for being a part of our work here at CHP Canada. And we couldn't do anything that we do without you. And we thank you for it. And we ask you all to continue with us, pressing on to accomplish that which God has prepared for us to do in these somewhat exciting days, sometimes troubling, but also exciting. It's an opportunity for us to shine and bring Christian biblical principles to bear on the major issues of our time in Canada. So thank you and have a great 2021.
Well, thank you, Rod. Thank you all for listening. We certainly wish you God's blessings in 2021 and hope to see you for another edition of CHP Talks.
Yeah, thank you.